So something pretty big just happened at the United Nations. The world spoke with, well, pretty much one voice on one of the most difficult conflicts on the planet. But what happens when that voice is met with a complete wall of opposition from the very people at the center of it all? Okay, let's get into it.
It all starts with this number, 142. That's how many countries at the UN General Assembly voted for a new declaration, a new peace plan, aimed at a two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians. I mean, that is a huge show of global consensus.
And then there's this, a direct quote from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which came out just hours before that massive global vote. And this contrast right here really puts the whole situation in focus. You've got this vast international agreement on one side and a really firm, defiant no on the other.
So, what exactly was everyone voting on? Well, it was a resolution called the New York Declaration. Now, it's what's called non-binding. That means it's not legally enforceable, but think of it as a powerful statement. It's the world putting its opinion on the record loud and clear.
And just look at the final numbers. 142 nations said yes, only 10 said no, and 12 abstained. On an issue this heated, getting a result that lopsided is pretty rare. It really paints a clear picture of where most of the world stands on a path forward.
But okay, what's in this thing? What kind of peace plan do those 142 countries actually put their weight behind?
At its heart, the New York Declaration is basically a roadmap. It was put together by France and Saudi Arabia, and it lays out a step-by-step plan to try and get to a two-state solution, to finally end a conflict that's been going on for generations.
And here are the 4 big steps it proposes. First, an immediate ceasefire. Second, the Palestinian Authority, that's the government in the West Bank, would take control of all Palestinian territory. Third, and this is a huge one, Hamas would have to disarm. And finally, a temporary UN mission would come in to help keep things stable for both sides.
So, with that plan on the table, how did its supporters feel? Well, for the Palestinians and the 141 other nations who voted yes, this was a really big deal.
You can really hear the hope in these words from the Palestinian UN ambassador Riyad Mansour. He said the vote shows the yearning to open the door for the option of peace. For them, this wasn't just some symbolic gesture. It was a real, genuine invitation to try diplomacy instead of conflict.
But as we saw from the very beginning, the opposition was just as strong. Israel and its closest ally, the United States, saw this whole thing in a completely different, much darker light.
And this is where you really see the divide, right? 2 totally different ways of seeing the exact same vote. On one side, it's a door for peace. On the other, it's a hollow gesture. Israel's ambassador called it theater. The US called it a gift to Hamas. It's the core of the problem. The same document is seen as both the solution and a major part of the problem. But here's where it gets a little more complicated, especially with that gift to Hamas accusation. The declaration doesn't ignore the violence. In fact, in a pretty rare move for a resolution like this, it explicitly condemns the violence coming from both sides.
For instance, the text specifically condemns the Hamas attacks on October 7th, which killed around 1,200 people in Israel. So that's right there, a key part of the framework. And right alongside that, the declaration condemns Israel's offensive in Gaza, pointing to the massive humanitarian crisis and a death toll of over 64,000 Palestinians. The idea here is to hold both sides accountable for the unbelievable human cost.
So where does all of this leave us? We've got a detailed plan, we've got overwhelming global support, and we have a hard no from the key players on the ground. What does a vote like this actually do?
Well, what it creates is a massive diplomatic impasse, a logjam. The UN has drawn a line in the sand, showing what almost the entire world thinks the answer is. But since it's not binding, and since Israel and the US are so strongly against it, it just highlights this huge gap between what the world wants and what's happening on the ground.
And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is this vote a powerful statement of global will that could, maybe, eventually push things toward peace? Or is it just proof of a divide so deep that no amount of international pressure can fix it? That's the critical question this vote forces us all to think about.